I think I didn't do anything wrong. I just made a joke about testing my husband's boss in bed. Everyone laughed, except him. Now, I'm staring at a stack of legal documents and wondering how a simple joke could have led to this. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The dinner at Bistro 43 was supposed to be fun. A double date with my sister Jeannie and her boyfriend, plus my parents and Elliot's father Howard. I'd invited Brandon Meyer, Elliot's boss, and his wife Pamela to join us. The wine was flowing, conversation was light, and I felt more alive than I had in months. You know, I said, raising my glass with a mischievous grin. I've been thinking about doing some quality testing at Elliot's workplace, making sure all the equipment is performing up to standards. I shot a meaningful look at Brandon, who chuckled and raised his own glass. Some equipment definitely needs more thorough testing than others, Brandon replied smoothly, his eyes meeting mine across the table. Everyone laughed, except Elliot. He sat there, fork halfway to his mouth, face flushing red. My mother Lydia cackled and nudged me. Vesperine, you're terrible, but good for you, honey. Elliot's father Howard cleared his throat uncomfortably. Jeannie shifted in her seat, looking between me and my husband with growing unease. I'm just saying, I continued, emboldened by the attention, some bosses really know how to motivate their employees. Isn't that right, Brandon? Brandon's wife Pamela excused herself to the restroom. Elliot set down his fork entirely. Vesperine, he said quietly, maybe we should... Oh, lighten up. I waved him off. It's just a joke. Everyone knows I'm kidding around. But I wasn't entirely kidding, and from the way Brandon was looking at me, he knew it too. The rest of dinner passed in strained conversation. When we got home, Elliot asked why I would say such things in front of our families, in front of his boss. Because it was funny, I shrugged, already planning my next text to Brandon. You're being way too sensitive. Later that night, I noticed Elliot quietly scrolling through his phone, taking notes. But I was too busy deleting my message history with Brandon to pay much attention. The workplace break room became our meeting spot. Brandon would find excuses to stop by the administrative office where I worked, lingering by my desk with that charming smile that made me feel special, desired. Your joke at dinner was bold, he said one Tuesday morning, leaning against my cubicle wall. I like bold women. I'm full of surprises, I replied, making sure to brush his hand when I passed him a file. The working late excuses started innocently enough. Brandon needed help with inventory reports, filing, catching up on paperwork. Elliot never questioned it. He was too trusting, too passive. That should have made me feel guilty, but instead it made me feel powerful. At home, Mira started asking why Mommy was always tired, why Daddy looked sad. 7-year-olds notice everything, but I brushed off her concerns. Mummy's just working hard to help our family, I told her, though the truth was, I was working hard to help myself feel alive again. Elliot grew suspicious when I started coming home with different stories about my late nights. First it was inventory, then client meetings, then system updates. My phone was constantly buzzing with messages I'd quickly delete. Who keeps texting you? He asked one evening. Work stuff. You wouldn't understand. It's administrative. I made it sound boring beneath his concern. My mother Lydia encouraged the changes she saw in me. You seem happier lately, more confident. Good for you, sweetheart. A woman needs to feel appreciated. But Jeannie was pulling back, making excuses not to hang out, cutting our phone calls short. Even Howard seemed to be watching me differently at family gatherings. The night Elliot came home early and caught me texting, I quickly claimed it was my sister. He nodded, said nothing, but the next morning I noticed him checking the mileage on my car. I thought he was being paranoid. I had no idea he was quietly installing a dash cam while I was inside making breakfast. The family dinner at my mother's house was my chance to show everyone who really had the power in my marriage. Lydia had made Elliot's least favorite meal, her dry pot roast, and I felt emboldened by her obvious favoritism. Elliot's been so paranoid lately, I announced over dinner, cutting my meat with theatrical precision, questioning my work schedule, checking my phone. It's like he doesn't trust me to handle my own responsibilities. Maybe he's intimidated, my stepfather Carl suggested mildly. You have been more confident lately. Exactly, I beamed. I've been taking on more responsibilities at work, building relationships with management. Some people, I glanced meaningfully at Elliot, don't appreciate ambition. Howard set down his fork. What kind of relationships? Professional ones, I said smoothly. Brandon Meyer has been mentoring me, helping me understand the business side of operations. He says I have real potential. Elliot's jaw tightened. Brandon says a lot of things. Are you jealous of your own boss? I laughed, but it came out sharper than I intended. That's pretty pathetic, even for you. Mira looked up from her mashed potatoes. Mommy, are you mad at Daddy again? The table fell silent. Jeannie reached over and squeezed Mira's hand. I'm not mad, sweetheart, I said, softening my voice. Daddy's just being silly. No, Elliot said quietly, standing up. Daddy's being careful. He kissed Mira's forehead. I'll see you at home, baby girl. Howard followed him out. Lydia immediately launched into a defense of my behavior, but I noticed Jeannie gathering Mira's things. Where are you going? I asked. Home, Jeannie said simply. This isn't appropriate dinner conversation in front of a child. That night, I found Elliot locked in his home office, surrounded by files and printouts. When I knocked, he didn't answer. When I tried the handle, it was locked. For the first time, I felt a flicker of real concern. The confrontation came on a Thursday morning. Elliot sat at the kitchen table with a manila folder, his coffee untouched, waiting for me to come downstairs. We need to talk, he said. I poured myself coffee, trying to project calm confidence. About what? About where you were Tuesday night when you said you were doing inventory. I told you we had to. The inventory was completed Monday. I checked. His voice was steady, methodical. I also checked the mileage on your car. 43 extra miles on a night when you supposedly stayed late at the office. My heart started racing, but I forced a laugh. Are you seriously tracking my car now? That's controlling, Elliot. That's not normal behavior. Neither is lying about where you're spending your evenings. He opened the folder. Neither is withdrawing cash from our joint account to pay for hotel rooms. The receipts were right there. Cash withdrawals that coincided perfectly with my meetings with Brandon. How had he gotten bank records? Those could be for anything, I said, but my voice sounded thin even to me. Could be, but they're not. He pulled out printed screenshots of text messages, my messages, with Brandon. My throat went dry. How did you... Cloud backup. You deleted them from your phone, but not from the server. He read from one of the printouts. Can't wait to test your equipment again tonight. That's from you to Brandon 2 days ago. I felt cornered, desperate. The only defense I had left was offense. You're sick, I snapped. Spying on me, tracking me, going through my private messages. What kind of husband is that? The kind whose wife is having an affair with his boss. I'm not having an affair. We're friends. We're colleagues. You're having sex with him in hotel rooms that you're paying for with our money. The bluntness of it, the calm way he said it, shattered something inside me. But instead of shame, I felt rage. Maybe if you paid more attention to me, if you made me feel wanted, I wouldn't need to look elsewhere. So you admit it. I admit that I deserve better than a husband who ignores me for months, and then acts like a controlling psychopath when I find someone who actually appreciates me. Elliot closed the folder. Pack a bag. You're staying at your mother's while I figure out what comes next. You can't kick me out of my own house. Watch me. He stood up. And Vesperine, if you try to take Mira with you, I'll call the police. A woman who's having an affair and lying about it isn't providing a stable environment for a 7-year-old. I called my mother, sobbing, painting Elliot as a monster who was trying to destroy our family over a harmless friendship. Lydia immediately threatened to get me a lawyer. But 3 days later, a courier knocked on her door with an envelope addressed to me. My hand shook as I read the legal separation notice and the attached evidence list. Text message logs, dashcam footage, bank statements, witness testimonies. The results of my testing were about to be presented in court. The law office of Andrews & Co. was sterile and intimidating, all glass and chrome and the smell of expensive leather. I sat across from Elliot and his attorney, trying to maintain some dignity while my world crumbled around me. Mrs. Arlott, the mediator began, your husband is seeking legal separation with specific terms regarding custody and financial arrangements. He's provided substantial documentation to support his claims of marital misconduct. I glanced at the evidence packet they'd prepared. Dozens of pages of text messages between Brandon and me, some embarrassingly explicit. Photos from the dash cam showing my car parked at Brandon's house, at hotels, at restaurants during times I'd claimed to be working late. Bank statements highlighting cash withdrawals that perfectly matched hotel receipts. This is all circumstantial, I said, though my voice lacked conviction. You can't prove anything definitive from text messages and parking locations. Elliot's lawyer, a sharp woman in her 50s, slid another document across the table. Actually, we can. Mr. Meyer has provided a written statement confirming the physical nature of your relationship. He's also submitted copies of messages you sent him discussing your husband and daughter in unflattering terms. My stomach dropped. Brandon had thrown me under the bus to protect himself, probably to save his own marriage. The man I thought cared about me had sold me out the moment it became inconvenient. I want to see my daughter, I said desperately. Supervised visitation only, Elliot said quietly, until this is resolved. You can't keep Mira from me. I'm her mother. You're a mother who was having an affair while her daughter was asking why Daddy looks sad, Elliot replied. You're a mother who withdrew money from her child's college fund to pay for hotel rooms with another man. That last part hit like a physical blow. I hadn't realized he'd tracked which account the cash withdrawals came from. I never meant for any of this to hurt Mira, I whispered, but it did hurt her. She's been seeing the school counselor because she thought our problems were her fault. The mediator cleared her throat. Mrs. Arlott, given the evidence presented, I strongly recommend you consider accepting the proposed terms. Fighting this in court will likely result in less favorable conditions and significantly more public exposure. But I couldn't accept it. This couldn't be how my story ended. Abandoned by Brandon, betrayed by my own family, losing my daughter to a man I'd convinced myself was weak. I'll see you in court, I said, standing up with as much dignity as I could muster. Elliot looked at me with something that might have been pity. Vesperine, please don't do this to Mira. She doesn't deserve to have her family's private business dragged through a courtroom. But I was already walking out, calling my mother to tell her we were going to fight. The county courthouse was smaller than I'd expected, less dramatic than the legal dramas on television. But the judge was real, and so were the reporters. Apparently word had gotten out about a local logistics company manager taking his cheating wife to court. I'd dressed carefully in a conservative blue dress, hoping to project the image of a wronged wife rather than an unfaithful one. My mother sat behind me, radiating righteous indignation. Across the aisle, Elliot sat with Howard and Jeannie, who was holding Mira's hand. My lawyer had warned me that the evidence was overwhelming, but I still believed I could make the judge understand my side of the story. I was lonely, neglected, emotionally abandoned. Any woman in my situation might have made the same choices. But when Elliot's attorney began presenting the evidence, the full scope of my deception became undeniable. Text messages where I'd called Elliot pathetic and boring to Brandon. Photos of me entering and leaving hotels. bank records showing I'd spent nearly $3,000 on my affair, money that was supposed to be for Mira's education and our family's future. The worst moment came when they played a recording from Elliot's phone, a conversation between Mira and me, where she asked if I still loved Daddy, and I'd responded with irritation, telling her that grown-up relationships are complicated and that sometimes mommies and daddies need different things. Hearing my own voice, the casual way I'd dismissed our daughter's concerns while I was planning my next rendezvous with Brandon, made me understand for the first time how this looked from the outside. When it was my turn to speak, I tried to explain about feeling unappreciated, about needing emotional connection, about how the affair was a symptom of deeper problems in our marriage. I even cried, real tears, because I was genuinely sorry that things had gotten this far. But the judge wasn't interested in my emotional justifications. "Mrs. Arlott," she said, "while marital dissatisfaction is unfortunately common, it doesn't justify deception, financial misconduct, or exposing a minor child to the instability of an extramarital affair. The evidence shows a pattern of deliberate dishonesty and prioritizing personal gratification over family welfare." The ruling was swift and brutal. Primary custody to Elliot, with my visitation limited to supervised weekends. The house would be sold, with the majority of proceeds going to Elliot to ensure Mira's stability. I would be responsible for paying back the money I'd taken from our joint accounts, plus legal fees. Most devastating of all, the judge granted Elliot's request for a restraining order, preventing me from contacting Brandon or coming to their workplace. Apparently, I'd made some threats when he'd refused to support me during the proceedings. As the gavel came down, I looked across the courtroom at Elliot. He wasn't gloating or celebrating. He just looked tired, sad, and relieved that it was over. Mira was crying quietly into Jeannie's shoulder, and even Howard seemed somber, despite having gotten the outcome he wanted. My mother stormed out, muttering about appeals and unfair judges, but I knew it was over. The joke I'd made at Bistro 43 had started a chain reaction that cost me my marriage, my home, my daughter, and my dignity. Elliot walked past me without a word, carrying Mira toward the exit. She looked back once, her 7-year-old eyes full of confusion and hurt that I'd caused. The results were in, and I'd failed every test that mattered. 6 months later, I'm living in a small apartment across town, working a different job, and seeing Mira every other weekend under the watchful eye of a court-appointed supervisor. The joke that started this whole mess feels like something that happened to someone else in another lifetime. Brandon never spoke to me again after providing his statement to Elliot's lawyer. His wife Pamela filed for divorce 2 weeks after the court hearing, having finally seen the evidence of what her husband had been doing. We were both casualties of our own poor choices. Elliot has been cordial but distant during custody exchanges. He's focused entirely on helping Mira adjust to our new reality, and from what I can see, she's doing better than I expected. Children are resilient, everyone says, but I know the damage I've done will follow her for years. My relationship with my family has never recovered. Jeannie barely speaks to me, and even my mother has stopped defending my actions now that she's seen the full scope of what I did. Carl, ever the peacemaker, suggested family therapy, but some bridges can't be rebuilt. I still think about that night at Bistro 43, about the moment I chose to make that joke instead of just enjoying dinner with my family. I tell myself I was just trying to have fun, to feel alive, to get some attention. But the truth is simpler and more damaging. I was selfish, entitled, and convinced that my wants mattered more than everyone else's feelings. The legal documents are filed away now, but the results of my choices are permanent. I tested the boundaries of my marriage, my family, and my own character. I failed every single test. And unlike the kind of testing I joked about that night, there are no do-overs, no second chances, no way to change the final score. The courtroom provided the only results that mattered, and they'll follow me for the rest of my life. Some jokes, it turns out, have very serious punchlines. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.